Welcome to No Clip, the podcast that's like a book club for people who don't think that books reward them enough for being good at them. I'm Chad Rutherman.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And today, we're going to be talking about Night in the Woods, a game that was developed by Secret Lab and Infinite Fall and was published by Finji, released in 2017 on Windows, macOS, Linux, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and iOS.
But first, if you give us a like or a rating, it would be greatly appreciated.
So, in classic form, Night in the Woods is an adventure game. And it reminded me of every game that we've ever talked about on the podcast.
Yeah.
So, if you just want to listen to every other episode of the show and skip this one, I think that's probably doable.
Yeah, we've definitely called this out before, that we have a type and we keep doing games that fit that type. But this is the most that type, I think. It's come to like a point.
Yeah.
With this game.
I think, honestly, and I mean, this game came out in 2017, so we're late on this one, technically speaking, which is weird considering that we're saying right now, like, there's a style of game that we play like every game in the genre, and this is one of those, and yet we were just like, nah, not gonna do this one. And I think there's a bunch of different elements that go into this game, because I've been aware of it for a long time, that made us we did want to play it and then just never kind of got to it. But yeah, I feel like I'm absolutely not in the right place for this game, and like right now I'm thinking back and going like, I feel like I would have loved this game if I had played it before we played every other game that's just like it. It really hurt the experience for me.
Yeah, I don't disagree. There was a point when this game made me think about this on multiple levels. But when I moved back from Morgantown, where we went to college, and you were living there, you'd done so like a year or so before, and so we would hang out because we were both back home. And we would play games like in the evenings. And this, I was like, this seems like one of those games that we'd have like stumbled on and like really loved. And yeah, I felt like if I had gone into it blind, like it was just a game I plopped down on your couch and you're like, hey, I've heard of this. And we just put it on. Like I feel like that also factors in. I think I would have liked it a lot more. Because yeah, I think a lot of games we played at that time I like a lot because I was just totally cold and knew anything about any of them.
Yeah. It was like, there's no way in 2022 to play A Night in the Woods if you are in the circle of games that we exist in to go in cold. Like, I had an idea of this game's reputation years before playing it. And it kind of like got to sit there and bake in. And then when I'm actually playing it, what I'm doing in my head is comparing it to a bunch of other shit, which isn't fair to the game. Like, we should be judging things in isolation, but also nobody does that. And so, and so that will come up. I have to say right off the bat, to do a comparison and to sort of, I think, slot this game in where I think it belongs as far as the hierarchy goes. When we did the episode on Oxenfree, I said, this is a good game that I would probably recommend 10 other games before I recommended it. This is that game that I would recommend before Oxenfree.
Yeah, no, I'm glad we're in such alignment, like the stars in the sky. Because I was thinking the same thing. Like, this fared better than Oxenfree, because I know we talked about similar things with that. It seemed like a game was super up our alley that we were a bit disappointed by.
Yep.
Yeah, so yeah, this definitely has more going on, more positives for it than that.
Yeah, and it's a little bit different in, and we'll get into spoilers here pretty much immediately. Oxenfree advertises itself as being sort of like having a supernatural element to it. It kicks off that game pretty quickly with some unusual things happening. This game doesn't really. It kind of gives off like a spooky vibe, which I think is what it wants to, but it's like a Halloween spooky, not like a horror movie spooky, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it buries the lead. It's mainly like a personal drama or like exploration of like, someone's like mental state in this situation, and then like halfway through it's like this conspiracy narrative shows up. So yeah, it is definitely a different beast.
Yeah,
in that way.
And so I think that would be the one thing I would say that to saying that this is like a strict upgrade over Oxenfree. But yeah, if you're more into the supernatural stuff, I think there are other games out there for you. But as far as this kind of a supernaturally tinged, mostly character-driven sort of story game, this is a very good one. And it's difficult for me to say whether things that we played in the past are necessarily better or worse. I had that one very clear example for me. But I don't know. I did enjoy playing it, and I stuck with it all the way through and in a pretty short time frame. So my first impressions are positive on it, I would say.
Yeah, and I think a good place to start, or at least a place I'd like to start, just get it out of the way, is that like the game's like relatability. Because I too, like many young adults do, moved away from home to go to college. And when I came back, like I never quite lost complete touch. Like I came back to visit my parents a lot. But like coming back to like the town you grew up in, like after college with like no immediate job lined up, and you're just like living at home, not really doing anything. And like, like things have changed. Like you can get in a really like sentimental mind state and be like, the Kroger I used to go to as a kid, like I would ride in the car with my mom, it's not there anymore. And like you can get a little sad in like a certain kind of headspace of like feeling like stuck in between moving forward and like also like backward isn't there for you either. And I think this game really like captured that like super well, that to the point where like that like this is probably like a little bit like autobiographical for like at least a handful of the people who worked on it.
Yeah,
it just feels very personal.
Yeah, one of the things that this game was sold to me on originally, like when I first started hearing about it, is just like, this is one of those games that like handles like personal issues and mental health in a way that is like believable, like I guess is down to earth and something that like people can relate to and can see themselves in. And that was part of the reason why I never wanted to play the game. I have a history of depression. I don't really like to fucking think about it because it's in the past and it was a time that I don't love. So I tend to steer clear of these things that talk about it in a very frank way, which is, I don't know, probably not healthy, but it does make me like, I just avoid it. I have to be in a mood, to be able to actually go back to that. And to me, this was relatable in a lot of senses, but it wasn't really that for me. I feel like May handles depression way better than I did, because she actually like gets out of bed and goes and does things, which is something I never did.
Well, she doesn't get up till like the afternoon,
sure,
which was also like relatable, I thought. Yeah, I do think that is something, at least for me, that also keeps it from being as even more relatable, is that like May kind of deals with things and like she like her social interactions are like not at all something like I would relate to, like the way that she like digs deeper holes for herself are not things that I ever did. But if the character was more like me, then I think it would hit home like even harder. Yeah. And also that's kind of the other thing, is like I was told in the past that this game handles depression, but it's never explicitly said if that is. In fact, I don't think that is May's thing necessarily. Yeah, it's more that, like, you could interpret it that she is, but it's never, like, stated that that's what's going on. So,
Right.
yeah, I don't know if she would label it that way. But I think there's something there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like this unwillingness to confront sort of like the external factors in your life. May's very singularly focused on herself and her immediate surroundings. And like when it's brought up that like why she left school and things, it's very confrontational to her. She doesn't want to address it. And to me, that's kind of what reads as depression, but
Just wanting to hide from it.
yeah, but then when you go in the opposite direction, like it was stated that she went to therapy in the game for having a violent outburst, and it was like a dissociative experience. She like had a period where she couldn't like separate her emotions from her actions and reality from fiction, and so I'm not a mental health expert or a psychiatrist, so I don't know exactly what those are symptoms of. But to me, it feels like it's tackling kind of a lot of things. If you look at the other characters, like they all show signs of at least something. There's some anxiety in this game. I think May's parents both have some level of anxiety. It's I don't know what you would call what B does other than his works too hard. And
She's, like, trapped in a certain, like, situation because of her family. Yeah, I don't know. There's probably some kind of word.
yeah.
Some kind of a relationship term for that, but
Yeah, I think a lot of people can probably relate to at least somebody in this game.
yeah, it's like all the, like, maybe not literally all of them, but most of them have, like, are affected by living in the town. Like, they either feel like embarrassed about it, or like they shouldn't be there and they like want to leave, or like, you know, there's like a bunch of different ways it like manifests, but like everyone seems like at least they're uncomfortable with living there in at least in like some small way.
Yeah, and it gets like, I think because those are the people that you interact with in the game is what makes the overall narrative arc of the game work as well as it does, because our antagonists are the polar opposite of that. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but I think it allows, it lets you set up the game in such a way that you, regardless of whether you initially relate to May and her friends, eventually you will, because of the storytelling and the fact that you spend the entire game with them. And so it does a good job of making it so that you don't really have, there isn't the game doesn't present you with an option of siding with the people who really like the town. And so when you get to that ending, you don't feel like that option is like missing. You just know that it's the wrong choice.
Yeah.
And I think that goes throughout the whole game. There are very few people who are just like gung-ho about this small town and just and are sympathetic.
Yeah.
Like they just aren't there.
For sure. So I guess I don't know if this is too big of a topic to jump into right now, but I guess I'll just try it anyway.
Sure.
I felt kind of like this had some similar like narrative bumps, like something like Sally Face. And I was also thinking about it as like an inverse Firewatch for me, where it started out where it was like the like personal narrative that I was like into, and then halfway it introduces a conspiracy narrative, and I kind of was like, I kind of want to go back to the personal stuff. Whereas in like something like Firewatch, I kind of wanted them to be treated equally. So it's not quite an inverse, but it just made me think of that. And then, yeah, and like Sally Face, I thought was a game that had like some cool personal things and supernatural things, and then it kind of just like spiraled into like a cult narrative, and it wasn't the greatest.
I actually, for the viewers and people who don't listen religiously to the podcast, a common running gag, so I don't take any notes. One of the notes that I took on this game actually is on this topic, so
well, there we go.
Flawless. And I actually thought of it in a different way. I think that this game reminds me of... Though I do want to address a few of those things, and how this game handles it. But to me, the game that this reminds me of the most is Life is Strange. And it's because the game almost unique... Like, it's difficult because I want to say the word uniquely, but I don't mean it literally. I just mean that Life is Strange is uniquely good at making you care about the personal side of things, the character part of the narrative, and then also making you care a lot about the supernatural side of the narrative, and making it so that you are always missing the other half when you get pulled away to do the other thing. Mm-hmm. It's like very few games have made me like be in the middle of some kind of UFO attack, sci-fi thrilling moment and be like, I'm wondering what Chloe's thinking about right now.
Yeah. I think they accomplished that by like tying the power to the characters like really early. The power becomes like associated with like Chloe dying, mm-hmm. Right off the bat, and about like finding Rachel. And, like, it's all, like, very well, like, mixed together.
Yeah. And I think that this game does a similarly good job, except the supernatural stuff kind of shows up all at once. You get the little tastes of it in the form of the arm and stuff.
Right.
And when that happens, I was surprised, and this is what kind of spurred it for me, is... when I got to the part where it was explicitly present, when they were like, we're looking for a ghost, and like the Harfest situation, I looked back at the rest of the story and I was like, how did this game make me forget about the arm? Because no other game would be able to do that I've played. Be like, here's an arm on the sidewalk, and you're going to spend a good long time looking at it, and then... it's just gone. It's in the background, and then it faded completely away, and I was very invested in just what May was dealing with. Why'd you say those things to me, May? That isn't the right way to do it. What about that arm on the ground? Like, they were two totally separate fucking brainwaves. Mm-hmm. I was impressed by it. I thought it was really good.
Oh, yeah. To me, like, it just felt like the arm is some foreshadowing, like pretty obvious foreshadowing, but like that something's up. But like, yeah, like they just felt like so separate. It felt like such an abrupt shift once the kid gets kidnapped. I don't know. They just felt like very separate modes. Like even like there were parts like you could continue doing like B or like Greg's side stories. And then, like, the parts where then you would go investigate whatever, they just felt, like, very separate to me and, like, not very, like, well, like, mixed together.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that entirely. Like, I don't think that they are... much like the supernatural and personal narratives, I don't think that those two modes of thought are, like, mutually exclusive. Mm-hmm. Because I do agree. I think they separated almost entirely up until the very end. And but I think that their ability to make me care a lot about both halves of it is what I appreciated. I was surprised that it was able to keep me invested in both without taking away from the other in my head. I can see it being so separate that it does take away from one or the other, but...
Yeah, like, I didn't, like, hate that it was there or anything, but I felt super not invested in the cult, like, story.
Super naturally invested?
Super naturally. But yeah, it just stood out to me. It's, like, not particularly graceful, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. What are we talking about next? My head went to two different places right now, and I think both of them are vastly inappropriate for right this moment.
Okay.
So let us do something else. This game has you on a couple of occasions choose what you want to do in a given day. And I was curious because I genuinely don't know if it makes you do all of them eventually, or if they are actual choices. Because I don't know how many there are. And I have a much bigger point that I'll get to way later about this. But I'm fairly certain that we did have differentiating paths through the game.
Yeah, I did a little bit of reading on this, and you can't see everything in one playthrough. Mm-hmm. Who you choose to spend time with, like, dictates, like, what you get to, like, what scenarios you can find and stuff's like dependent on where you are on what day and blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it is they are actual choices of like what you do with your time.
Hell yeah, probably. I'll get into it later. So did you find yourself in particular, I suppose, drawn to any of the characters? I mean, the big ones in this are Greg and B, because you can't really choose to spend time with anybody else.
Yeah, you can spend a little bit more time with Angus a little bit later, but yeah, it is like basically like, yeah, who's your best friend, Greg or B? And I chose to spend time with B,
which means that Greg was your best friend, because all you do when you're with B is just fuck her fights. Up. Yeah.
Yeah, because I found her story the most interesting, and I found Greg to be a little annoying. So
I found Greg, originally I was just going to alternate. My biggest complaint with this system is that it didn't give you anything to go off of. Like, and this is like a complaint coming from me and may not be from anyone else. But like, I would talk to both of them and they'd be like, work sucks. You want to hang out? And I'd be like, well, hold on. Hey, Greg, what's going on? He's like, work sucks. You want to hang out? I was like, what a choice. I've been blown away by the amount of depth in this decision that I'm making. So I just went back and forth. I did B first, then Greg, then B. And then I think it just ends at that. I think you could choose 3 times. And so the one thing I did with Greg, I'm happy I saw, I guess, which was where I built a fucking animatronic robot. And then the other 2 things that happened with B seemed like 1,000 times deeper in every conceptual way.
Yeah, I did the same.
Okay.
There are deeper things to do with Greg. I know I saw some clips. Like, there's a part where you like are on the back of his bike and he's taking you out to the woods or whatever, which I did not see. Yeah, I built the pizza band robot with him, and then later I went to investigate the historical society building.
That's the one I didn't do.
Yeah. But yeah, so it depends on like who you choose to spend your time with, like which character has like the side quest or whatever you want to call it, the story that you get to experience with.
Yeah, so I don't know, that whole thing, like, I guess we ended up doing the same thing, so like, not super helpful in this particular discussion. But I think that by itself kind of speaks to it, because I don't know if I would say that Greg annoyed me. It just, to me, felt like Greg didn't necessarily need a bud around all the time. Whereas,
he's got a boyfriend.
Yeah, the one time that both of us chose to go with Greg is the time that
Angus is gone.
Yeah, he's out of town. And so we were like, oh, I guess now there's a reason to hang out with Greg, whereas before it just always seemed like B seemed to be in a worse mood.
Yeah, I agree. Like, there is more to Greg under the surface. Like, it's implied that like he was your best friend, or maybe just explicitly stated, growing up, and it is revealed that he's bipolar. I know B told me that, but like he tells you that if you do his story. So he's got like some like issues and things and like reasons to pick him too, but like B's are so much more obvious.
Yeah.
Like Greg seems like he's perfectly content to just do whatever, and B is miserable.
I mean, that is true. I mean, maybe that's part of the message of the game, right? Like, signs of mental illness are easily overlooked.
Yep.
Because, like, neither of us knew that Greg was necessarily bipolar until the end of the game. But they chose to make his manic side seem like a cartoon character in a game where all the characters are cartoon characters. So it made it harder to... I'm not looking...
pick up on.
Yeah. Like, I'm not looking for bipolar symptoms in a... Is he a fox?
Yeah.
Yeah. In a fox, in a jacket. That's not what I do normally. Not that I was more looking for signs of mental illness in a crocodile, but they said it with their mouth and their words.
Yeah, well, bees is less like mental illness and more just like problems, like I don't want to say regular life problems, but like financial problems and problems with her dad and stuff like that.
Yeah. And then the whole thing where she goes to parties at a college and pretends like she goes to that school. Mm-hmm. That's something going on. I don't know anybody who does that.
No, but I feel like it made sense though. Like she can't or didn't. Well, I guess can't go to college, so she like has like a friend who does that. She just like, goes to parties so she can like feel like she's normal. Mm-hmm. I thought that was relatable too. I never done anything like that, but like I could see myself doing that.
I mean, I could imagine going to an event that is far outside of my area. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, the thing that makes it seem like somebody who's very like low self-esteem or whatever is the lying about going to school there. That seems like it's a bit far.
I don't know. It might just be a difference in personality, but like I could see like you didn't go to college, all your friends went to college, like you're more or less like just kind of by yourself. Like I can see like wanting to like go and pretend that you are a college student at a college party. Like at age like 20 or whatever, however old they are.
Yeah.
Like I don't think it'd be something I'd ever like make a habit of, but I could totally see myself doing it in her shoes.
All right. Well, there it is. But this is exactly why we all chose B and did not choose Greg. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that stuff works pretty well, and I think that's why there's a lot of strength in the character-based parts of this game. Whereas once it gets into some of the other stuff, like this isn't really where we're talking about this kind of thing, but the base supernatural thing that you're going to get more frequently throughout the game are the nightmare sequences, which just are the worst part of the game because they're just the same kind of thing and they take a while to do, and everything that they give you is really abstract, but which can be cool, but it's delivered in such a sort of low stakes, clunky way that I was never engaged while I was doing it. I was just checking off items on a checklist and then going to a prescribed location. It didn't make me feel the weight of the situation. And I think made me crave the character stuff a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I liked them at first, but yeah, I feel like a little bit of like variety would have gone a long way, or like leaning into the abstractness more. Cause yeah, like each one you just have to like find the 4 musicians and like light the lamps. And and that's it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, cool idea that I like. And the game does have platforming mechanics, which I thought was like fun thematically because you're a cat. Like at first I was like, why is this in the game? I was like, oh yeah, because like I'm a cat and I can like walk on the power lines. That makes sense.
And they do more with it than I think a lot of other games do. Like,
yeah,
a game that I'm going to be talking about in the second half a little bit, Wander Song, has jumping in it, but like they could have just not had it and designed the levels differently and nobody would have thought anything about it. This at least like your friends are like, oh, well, you should do that because you jump on shit. Right. That's what you do. So it's like built into your character as well. So
yeah, it just the dream sequences or like astral projecting sequences or whatever's happening in those. Feel like they might have been there to like kind of try and justify those mechanics a bit more, even though they didn't really need to. But that, it's just my 2 cents.
I mean, that's probably the amount of brain money we need to spend on the nightmare sequences from a mechanical standpoint anyway. So I will bank those 2 cents. What they actually do, though, like what their purpose is to sort of show you this, like, I don't know how to best describe it, menagerie of spooky ghost animals.
Yeah, there's like some like folklore-ish stuff going on. Like there's like a backstory to the town that you only get little snippets of. And it's like, I think it's trying to communicate that like May has some kind of connection to it. But it never really goes into it, which is, I think, the right call. But yeah, like story-wise, I think that's why they're in there. Yeah,
but I think it does it in a good way, insofar as it makes you keep your like mind open for the eventual like sort of a twist where things truly go very south. And but because prior to that, like, there's no real evidence one way or another that there's anything going on.
No.
So the dream sequences do that, and so I will give them credit for it.
Yeah, I thought they were all just gonna be like metaphor for a while. But yeah, the arm is the one thing that makes you think maybe it wasn't a metaphor.
Maybe it wasn't a metaphor.
But yeah, it seems like it ends up not being metaphorical at all. But that's the direction I thought it was.
Well, I'm sure that it is a metaphor in some way.
Yeah, I mean, but like just an internal like representation of like her struggle.
Yeah. But yeah, it is not only that at all. There is more to it to string it along. But not that much more, because I feel like the bulk of the entertainment value provided in this game does come from outside of that in the actual like game. Yeah, fuck it, we'll talk about it now.
Sure.
I think the bulk of the entertainment comes from the writing, the dialogue, the characters, and not from having a bunch of stupid shit to do. We often talk about early 2000s forced variety, a term that you coined to describe when there's just like, fuck it, there's a swimming level in this game, and now you're in a spaceship doing a thing.
Yeah, like PS2 era games did this a lot. Like there's like in Bayonetta has the one like Star Fox level where you're like riding a missile or whatever.
Yep, there's lots of weird shit like that.
A very good example of it.
But indie games have now caught up to early 2000s forced variety and are just stuffing everything that they possibly can into the game. I found most of it to be pretty unnecessary, though largely not a hindrance to the game. But I gotta say, like, the finding the constellations in the stars mini game, and pretty much any time that your hand was on screen, I was like, I hate this, and wanted to go away. I'm gonna bet that you didn't care.
Oh yeah, not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the things I thought you were talking about were were Demon Tower and the band practice. Like in my head, like the looking at the stars with the teacher and things like that, like were just part of the game. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean
I didn't think of them as like separate mini games.
Well, I wouldn't consider it a mini game. I do think that the band practice and the and Demon Tower both are more closely a mini game.
Yeah,
but they also have different problems, I want to say, that really, if you add everything together, I still don't think it really detracts meaningfully from the quality of the game.
I mean, most of it's optional. Too.
Yeah. And that's the biggest problem with Demon Tower, is I never felt compelled to play it. Like, I didn't know why I would want to.
Yeah, I really like top-down games, so like I would play it each night before going to bed until I reached like floor 7, I think, and then I stopped because I was like, I need to finish this game. But yeah, like there's no motivation to actually play it other than I think the game puts that kind of stuff in there just to like ask the player like what they feel is worth spending their time on. And it's just all optional, and it's just like whatever you feel like doing, I think is like what they want, like what their goal was.
Yeah. And like the band practice thing, my biggest problem with it is that it has I was playing it on a Pro controller, and it has X and Y buttons, and I don't know where those are.
I had the exact same problem. I played on PC, and that's the only time I ever use a controller that has like Xbox like setup. It's a third-party controller, but it has like Xbox buttons.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, if I had been playing it on Switch, I don't think it would have been a problem. But like the fact that the X and Y are swapped fucked me up.
Yeah. Because I played a lot of games using an Xbox style layout and a lot of games playing a Nintendo style layout, I just don't know where they are on either controller. It's just a total mystery to me at all times. And so playing it was like just hoping that I would press the correct button. That being said, the only time that anyone openly criticized my performance at a band practice was on that last song that seems designed to ruin your day.
Pumpkinhead guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I almost wish that the Xbox controller was just colors, because I can remember that blue is on the left and yellow is at the top, and it should make sense that like Y is yellow, just because it starts with it, and then X is the blue one. But in the moment, I can never remember.
Right. Just completely shot.
Yep.
Yeah. Also, you can't read the lyrics when if you're trying to play the bass correctly.
I thought that was strange as well. Mm-hmm. Like, why put them in there if you can't read them?
Yeah, or like you have a notebook in the game as like a diegetic menu. Put the lyrics in the notebook so that you can go back and read them later. Mm-hmm. Because I wanted to know what any of the songs were about, but also I have far too much pride to not try and play the song perfectly.
Yeah, like it felt like they were catchy too. Like I remember I did catch Pumpkin Head Guy. Yeah. I was like, that's pretty good. I wish I knew what any of the other words were.
Yeah. I mean, it's just because the game doesn't have voice acting, it's weird for them to put it in a song. Yeah. But
that almost even would have felt appropriate, like as a break from the rest of the game, to have had like someone actually record like some kind of classic indie band voice vocalist come in and do it.
Mm-hmm. You're the guy from Super Brothers Sword and Sorcery who said the one word that's spoken aloud in that game. Yeah, I think he just is like, what? He can do all that. That's fine.
But yeah, no, I also noticed that. Mm-hmm. I thought it was a little strange.
I have a wider point about all of those things.
Okay.
And it probably won't take more than 5 minutes. Let's talk about it right now.
Okay.
This is a thing I've mentioned before. I don't know if it's been on the podcast that I have like a video essay brewing in my head about games that have multiple endings. But I think that this is an example of a game that actually, once again, a lot like Oxenfree, kind of wants you to play it more than one time inside of a game that I would never in a billion years play a second time. That's probably not true. In 1 billion years, I will have forgotten enough about this game that I will play it a second time. But, like, it is such a narrative-focused thing that I don't want to jump back into it. And, like, I fed those rats a pretzel. I don't know what happens after that because I never went back there. I talked to the preacher once, I think. There's all kinds of stuff in this game for you to run around the town and do, which seems like a valiant effort, but to me, it felt like there was never much incentive to go do it, and I felt like there were a lot of things that I only picked up on later in the game that I would have necessitated me going back through in order to realize, and whenever those panned out, was it going to be worth playing through the game again? I wager no. I think there's an audience for this kind of stuff, but I am squarely outside of it.
Yeah, I think I largely agree, but also have like a different takeaway. Because yeah, like there is a lot of stuff that you'll miss, and you do have like a sense of it. It does seem like there are certain things that like you aren't in the right place at the right time for, and like, you know, like the granny in the underground tunnel says to come back and talk to her, but then she's like not there ever. So yeah, there's definitely, you can tell like there's stuff that's not going on. But this game actually doesn't really have multiple endings. Mm-hmm. Like, you do get, like, a different scene at the end, depending on which character you spent more time with. And, I don't know, I feel like I liked that. Like, I like that it left, like, things open. It felt very much like, do what you want to do, and it didn't feel like I was, like, pressured to, like, go do everything and to get the true ending. Like, it felt like it lacked that sort of, like, pressure or like self-awareness of the multiple endings in a way that like I felt satisfied with what I saw and don't really feel bad about like having to play it, like feeling guilty or feeling that little bit of a pull to want to play it again, but knowing that I'm never going to. Like, I didn't have that with this game personally.
Okay. I think that's probably fair. I think the biggest...
But I agree with your larger point that I also don't really like how popular it is to have multiple endings in games that you're not going to play again.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I knew in my heart of hearts that this game did not actually have multiple endings, but it was just that, like, breadcrumb trail of other stuff that feels like, because there are people out there who are big Night in the Woods fans. These are the people most likely to be listening to this podcast without having heard anything else that we've done.
Yeah.
So my intention is not to piss you off. Who will want to do things like, you know, find the end of the story of every character in the town, beat Demon Tower.
That does have multiple endings, apparently.
Can you play Demon Tower more than one time in one playthrough of the game?
I don't know.
It looks like Night in the Woods does have multiple endings. It's just in the middle of the game and accessible from the second day. But I just don't engage with that kind of stuff. And yeah, this game didn't pull me in that direction. I really like parts of it. I like being rewarded for exploring, but the thing that I want to be rewarded with is not a job to do. Like, when I found the window that you can open that goes into the storage room with the busted float in it, I was like, yeah! And then it was like, look inside, and she's like, oh, look, there's some mice in here. I should get them something to eat. And I was like, no! Don't make this go on to the point where it loses its novelty. And that was kind of how I felt about most of the stuff that wasn't main story content. And I don't know. To some people, this is a playground and something that they would really enjoy. But to me, it just isn't that. So,
Yeah, I sympathize.
do you want to ground our opinions with a little bit of time off and then talk about the other stuff after the break?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. For the record, no, it didn't sound good. That was a stupid joke. Welcome back. I wanted to touch on, I don't know if you had a thing you wanted to jump on right away.
No, you go for it.
That there's I forget when we talked about this, but we have talked about it in the past. Sort of a homogenation of the, like, art style of these type of twee indie games. But I wanted to call out this game for, like, bordering on that, but actually being super good.
Yeah, it does more of its own thing. 'Cause as somebody who is a graphic designer and works a lot with Illustrator, I really like to see games that have, like, either vector art or digital illustration as their art and not pixel art. I know, like, pixel art and 3D models get used a lot because they're more convenient, like more like integration into, like, the engines that people use. But I just love the look of it, like something like a Hollow Knight or an Ori or like this, where it's like a hand-drawn, like, art style. You just really get a lot more of, like, the personality of the artist in the art. Yeah,
and I like that they went with that sort of, like, lineless style where everything is just sort of a shape. It took me, like, a while to even really notice it, because that's kind of when that style is done well, you don't immediately. And it gives the characters, you notice that the characters have these distinct silhouettes that differentiate them from each other. It's why our principal characters are all different species. Because it's really easy to tell them apart and give them a little personality sort of based around their visual look.
I always love the sideways head thing.
Yeah.
That just reminds me of, like, drawing as a kid and, like, not knowing how to, like, draw the nose on the front, so you just put it out the side of the head. I really like that B's always smoking a cigarette, because at first I couldn't tell if it was a cigarette or a lollipop based on the art style.
Yeah. I was impressed I don't know if impressed is the right word. I liked their dedication to the bit, because it seemed like she would put it out when you would go indoor places, but she didn't. And I was like, okay, so it's just like a part of the model, and that's how they're going to do it. And then later in the game, there's a part where it becomes pitch dark, and you can see the light of the cherry as she goes by. And I'm like, man, they really were, like, very aware of it being there. Yeah, but not so much that they remove it ever.
And I have to wonder, because, like, part of the reason I thought it might be a lollipop is she never takes it out of her mouth or, like, takes a drag on it or anything. Or you see her, like, lighting a new one or anything like that. And I was like, is that because the arms are too short to, like, actually have her do that, and they realized that, thought it was funny, and, like, decided to make it a thing that it's just always there, she never really smokes it? Or they just didn't want to animate it? Like I wonder, like, what led to that, or if it's just a joke.
Yeah.
or what combination of those things. Yeah,
a little bit of columns A through double E. That definitely also struck me. I would say the one character that I found, there was a breaking point for me, and it was right at the end of the game, thank God. that I realized that Greg's eye was directly in the center of his head. And so he just looks like a cyclops with a mouth on the side of his head. And it took me, and I couldn't unsee it after that. That's just what Greg was to me. From that point on.
That's very funny.
But I would say that's the only time that it didn't really land.
Yeah, I think the color palette's really nice too. Like you get like the autumn colors, which makes everything feel like warm and cozy, like back in the hometown. And then it gets to contrast a little bit with like the more blues and purples of the titular night in the woods. One of the titular nights in the woods.
Yeah, you do end up going into the woods at night on multiple occasions, and I was like, oh, I was really hoping this would be more definitive. But then they do go into a little bit of deep lore where the night in the woods is in reference specifically to whatever it is that play is supposed to be about.
Oh, yeah, like the founding of the town.
Yeah. So there's...
Yeah, it is referenced there. And then it is also like at the end of the game where you get like shot at and are in like a mini coma, and there's the party early on where you drink too much and throw up.
Yep.
Which one is it? It's all of them.
Yep, that's the secret. They were all the same. Time is a closed circle. This game takes place over one day, multiple
Just like
times.
Kentucky Road Zero.
Yes. But that's all I had on visuals for what it's worth. I thought it looked good, and I agree with the color palette comment. That's something that I would have wanted to say if I had thought of it. So good job.
So I'm glad you thought of it, Chad.
Yeah, I'm a genius.
Another dumb little thing in kind of line with the cigarette thing is that this has the Pluto problem, where it's a town full of anthropomorphic animals, and there's also animals running around. Yeah,
I definitely had noticed that as well. I think even characters reference having pets as well, and I would have definitely remembered if somebody said that they had a cat.
There are cats, like actual animal cats.
Mm-hmm. Which makes you wonder now, are the animals in the game like in the graphic novel Mouse, just a metaphor for different people? May's a risk taker, so she's a cat. That's the only one that makes
Greg
sense.
Is a fox, so he's gay.
Like all foxes.
Which is why they went extinct hundreds of years ago.
But you could make the argument about Angus being a bear because he is gay. But there are also, I believe, not gay bears in the game. which means the metaphor doesn't necessarily work fully. Also, probably not good optics of making all gay people one species of animal. And I'm not really, I didn't think that one out, but I feel like that probably isn't a thing you should do.
Not canceled?
Preemptively uncanceling. Angus is cool as a character, and I feel like I had one scene with him, and then he went back into the background for the whole game. And I don't know, that sucks. They gave him like a real deep backstory. And all that stuff with his parents. I guess part of it is him just not wanting to talk about it.
Yeah, it's like really heavy. I feel like I'm having like memories of a similar conversation we had, but I cannot remember what it was. So I guess pointless referencing of nothing. But it feels like very heavy to just kind of like dump on you in such a short span of time and then never bring up again.
Was it the Life is Strange 3 text message thing?
It's possible.
Because that's kind of...
I feel like it was old. It was longer ago than that.
It was longer ago than that.
But Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, Angus is cool. I did do the part where I went up the hill with him and we looked at constellations. He is, like, I feel like just, like, a little bit different in style than the other characters because he's got the glasses for his eyes, but, like, he is, like, very cute with his little hat and his little tie, you know? I would have also liked him to be promoted to, like, a third more important character that you could choose to spend to be your best friend.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's implied sort of in the game. I think he's oh no. So they put on at least in the Switch version of the game, the option to play their early released stuff. And one of which is that Find the Constellation scene, but with all of them. It's called the Longest Night.
Yeah, I think that was like a Kickstarter thing.
Yeah.
And on PC you had to download them separately, so I did not play them.
Damn.
I think, anyway. I don't think they were in the version of the game that I have.
Well, that one isn't particularly important. It gives a little bit of backstory to the characters that may or may not actually be real backstory, because I think the characters changed a bit in development from when that came out. But I believe that Angus is supposed to be a little bit older. I know Greg is older than you are, and also B. So I think maybe just like May didn't have a relationship with Angus prior to.
Yeah, I think that is in the text.
Yeah.
But I don't remember specifically.
Which is why he doesn't get quite as much of a part, but I don't know. I talked to him at the video store every day just to make sure he was doing all right.
Same.
Yep.
So another character that we have not talked about yet is May has an aunt, which I can't remember if she has a name.
I think it's Molly, which is why they call her Mall Cop. But I also may have headcanoned that myself after having played the game for a little bit.
That is very good, so I'm just going to call her that.
Okay.
So Molly, I feel like, I don't know if her character is supposed to be a little bit of a red herring or if I missed something, but it really feels like they're setting it up for her to, like, come save you, like, in the mine, like, from the cult, and it just doesn't happen. It felt like there was, like, some kind of like payoff to, like, the friction between the two of them that was being set up, and it just never paid off.
Well, I said that I headcanoned her name into being Molly, but that's not the only thing that I headcanoned in this game. I think she's one of the cultists. I don't necessarily know that to be true, but she always just tells May to be careful without ever specifying the nature of the danger that she might be in. And never really talks to her about everything. She does follow up with her about the arm, which I think may prove that it's not right. But to me, it seems like she has a vested interest in keeping the town afloat more than most people, because it's her career, and it's a career that is, like, central to the town. May's dad can hawk salamis in a different grocery store without much issue.
I feel like that the mine collapses, though, at the end, and I thought, like, all the cultists definitely died.
You think all of the cultists were in the mine?
How could they have gotten out?
Well, I thought maybe some of them weren't in the mine.
Oh, I guess that could be
or
the
they're
case.
in the cahoots with the cops.
I guess. But to me, Molly felt like a genuine cop, and I felt like the game, my headcanon anyway, was that, like, they were trying to express that, like, we as a society, like, have, like, a warped view of how much power cops actually have, and the fact that, like, she's not able to, like, really do anything, and, like, it takes her days to follow up with the arm, and, like, how, like, she wants to, like, believe her, but, like, I don't know. I feel like it's just, like, she can't just be a hero, or she can't just, like, go confront, like, whatever danger, like, May claims is there. I don't know. I felt like there was supposed to be some kind of friction between, like, expectation and reality of what cops do.
Sure. To me, I feel like they separate her, to me, like, my reading of it is that they separate her almost entirely from the rest of the police force because they don't exist in the game.
Yeah.
And to me, it feels like I had a negative view of Molly, whose name still might not be that, a lot, because there are these situations where May was obviously in distress, and her reaction is always just to take her home and never to look into things. So the obvious one is after Harfest, where she follows the guy, her ghost, up the hill, and then Molly conspicuously shows up because she's a cultist. And she's like, there's a ghost, or somebody took a kid. They're right up that hill. And she's like, no, there isn't. And then takes her home. Even not reading it in my stupid way, I think that to me, like it seems like more of a personal thing. I think that her aunt does not have like a level of respect for May because of her past, and that is why she just collects her and takes her back and is like, stop doing these things. But I don't know. I didn't read it as a metaphor in that kind of a way. I read it more of a just like almost an estranged family member.
I agree too. Like I think it goes both ways. That like I don't like May obviously doesn't respect her either.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like there's a tension there, like because they are related. That like I don't know. I feel like it. I don't know. I feel like she's good intentioned, but like she's like like jaded as a cop, I think. And also, like, doesn't trust May because of her past, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Plus, if May's been hanging out a lot with B, she might be sipping on some of that red Kool-Aid. Hey, comrade, you picking up what I'm putting down? And may not have the trust for any cops, really. So, that also could play a part in it.
Yeah, yeah. But I did not read her as a cultist, but it is a fun theory.
We're stacking up my fun theories like, that aren't real.
She's like their guy on the inside that they pay off to keep the cops off their backs.
I'd believe it. And the people they kill and get rid of are all troublemakers, causing trouble for the cops. Can't eat them donuts like the cops like,
Much like a donut, there's a hole in your theory.
So that's that part of the podcast. How you guys liking it so far?
I guess something that I should have mentioned on the first half, but like missed my opportunity for, just like exploring the town. I think is I think it's like a decent size, and I like that there's like different levels to it, like with the power lines and stuff that you can like walk around on and explore. But this game is like 10 hours long, and I think it would have benefited for there being like some shortcuts to get around a little quicker. Like I don't really mind like walking around because like that's what the game is. Like you go around the town and you see who's where and who you can talk to and what you can do. But yeah, by like once you get later into the game, like maybe like once the cult thing shows up and like you maybe want to like get like a little bit more like, oh, I want to go do this and go do this and go do this. I think it would have benefited a little, cut through a backyard or something, however you want to contextualize it.
Yeah. And shortcuts absolutely would have been the way to do it.
Or like have a character with a bike that you can like jump on the back and they take you somewhere.
I could see that. I think shortcuts work better than like a fast travel system here because it does like it feels more natural, and like you can play up the fact that you've got that cat-like agility and are jumping fences and whatnot.
Yeah, it stood out to me because of the tunnel kind of felt like it was gonna be a shortcut, like when I first found it, but it just doesn't. It just cuts under one part and puts you out like exactly where you would be if you were above ground.
Yeah. And the part that it puts you past is where the old pickaxe is.
Yeah, is where B works.
And more like lives.
Yeah.
We're being crushed
right?
under the capitalist society, as B would say. And and so if you take it as if it was a shortcut, which it was kind of a shortcut for me, because when I'm walking from point A to point B, I'm just jumping constantly, and I'll always end up like standing on a mailbox for a second or whatever.
Yeah.
So just having none of that does actually save me time. But then if you inevitably want to talk to B, because you talk to all three of your main dudes every day, you have to then go through a loading screen and then another loading screen to go back to where she is, and then a loading screen again to get back to where you are. It's just inefficient.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you brought it up, because I feel like if I brought it up, it would be like, I don't know.
Too on brand.
Yeah, it would be too expected.
Yeah, like it didn't bother me that much. It's just something I thought about. It was the tunnel that really made me think about it. It just feels like this. It feels like it's masquerading as a shortcut, and it isn't.
Yeah, and I think honestly, it plays into what we were talking about in the first half. With there's a lot of stuff in the town, and there needs to be room for that stuff, and to be spaced far enough apart that it actually feels like you're discovering something.
Yeah.
But the knock-on effect is that if you're me and you're not trying to do all of the side content, you end up just running down the street every day. Except Selmers. Selmers is the realest bitch.
The poet?
Yeah. Selmers is the best character in this game. And I did talk to her every day.
Me too.
But that's it, really. Other than that, I just ran past. I started occasionally talking to the guy on the porch, because I discovered that he doesn't always just tell you to leave.
Yeah, I think every character that like I ever talked to, I talked to each day that I could. Just because, yeah, like I felt like I didn't want to miss stuff, but I feel like I still missed a lot of stuff. So
yeah, well, yeah, like I remember, like I found the teens, the goth teens on the cliff.
Oh yeah,
and they
I remember them.
Yeah, and they tell you to find 3 pentagrams, and they have the first one, so you really are finding 2 pentagrams. And I found the pentagram in the party sequence. That's a secret handshake.
Right.
But I don't know where the other one is, and I don't know how I would have.
You never saw them again?
Well, I saw them again in the sequence where you go to the graveyard, because they're like just there.
Yeah, I didn't get that part, so I wanna maybe have you tell me what happens there. But
like I don't know how I was supposed to. I don't think that you are. I just randomly stumbled across the pentagram handshake. I don't think, as far as I could tell, there were no clues as to how to find it. I don't know how I would find the third one. It was just deeply unappealing to me to wander around entirely blind to go get stuff.
Right.
So yeah, the town's too big.
Yeah, I completely forgot about those characters. I never saw them again.
Okay, so did you not go to the graveyard?
Yeah, I wanted to, but the time I went, like after, like once that like option had opened up to go explore the 3 locations, I went to hang out with B, and it was the party sequence.
Right. Yeah.
And then I went and I hung out. I had already hung out with Angus and gone to the Constellation Hill. And then, so I hung out with B and went to the party, and then the next day I hung out with Greg, because I didn't know I couldn't do all 3.
Yeah, I went to the Historical Society.
And I went to the Historical Society.
Yeah, so I didn't go to the Historical Society. I guess it's just do 2 is the way that you do it.
Yeah, you can only do 2.
Yeah, so I did B's and then Angus. This is my second. The graveyard sequence is, I don't know, it's pretty decent. I think there's a bit of filler in it in a way that I wasn't a big fan of. The first part of it is B goes to talk to her mom in the way that Rex talks to his. Yeah. And yeah, like at the grave. And I think that the scene could have been really good if it was she goes and talks to the grave and you guys have a moment. But she says, "Go away." and do other stuff while I do this. And so the game's other stuff is it makes you go brush leaves off 3 gravestones and have a pointless conversation with the guy who is the gravedigger there, which is like one lukewarm joke and like a mild implication that maybe there was something that went on at the graveyard at some point. And it just takes a little bit of time, and it doesn't genuinely bring up much of use to you. But then it goes into the good part where you crest a hill and the goth kids are in the graveyard and they ask you these series of questions. You have to answer their riddles 3. And one of the things that they ask is, what is your most embarrassing experience? And B is just like, one time I farted in front of the whole class or whatever. And then you get the option of saying this one time in junior high school, this one time in high school, this one time in college. And I chose this one time in high school. And she tells this story about prom with whatever his name was, that kid that you see at the party.
Yeah.
And how the reason that she has, that she's so awkward around him is they went to prom together. And, she bit his lip so badly that it wouldn't stop bleeding during their first kiss, and then she puked on him in the bathroom and then was like eating peanuts or something. There's like this big long story. It's really well told. And I should like look up what the other 2 options are, because the fact that they could come up with anything that would be a believable response to that question that isn't that one is this whole thing. And then you go dig a skeleton up out of the ground and it jump scares you.
Wow.
So yeah, I thought the graveyard was great after the first boring part.
The Historical Society with Greg has like an actual like kind of like scary moment. When you get there, he's like, hold this flashlight and I'm going to pick the lock because you're breaking in. And it has him like doing it and you're holding the light for him. And then he's like, turns around over his shoulder, like, because it's like a hill and then like the building over here. And then you have to like shine the light up at the hill to like see what's there. And then there's nothing, so you go back, and he's doing it for a little bit, and then he turns around again, and then and then eventually an owl comes down and like swoops.
That's you get a jump scare too.
It is a jump scare, and it's a really like good moment, like making you like have to like be the one that moves the light to see it. I thought it was actually pretty good, but you just kind of go around the building. Like it kind of reminded me of like a more classic adventure game style thing where you're like going into rooms, like you had to get like a paper clip because he like breaks his lock pick or whatever, and you had to pick another lock. So you had to like get stuff to do that. Yeah, God, what do you even find there? You find like a map of the town, like an old map of the town, and then like you find some kind of like document. I don't remember what it is. I don't think it was that important. Yeah,
if I remember correctly, the Historical Society thing would have been the ghosts related to the mine massacre.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then in the graveyard, the thing that you're specifically looking for is Lil Joe or something. I forget what his name is, but it's like an old folk tale about somebody who was buried there, and that's whose skeleton that you end up not digging up. It's a sinkhole. Has occurred and you accidentally break the ground. But that is, like I think the different things that you find in the newspaper section lead to the different places. Honestly, the one that we both did, I don't remember what that was supposed to be at all.
Oh, with Angus. Yeah, I don't remember either.
Yeah, you just seem to go up there and look at the stars. And to me, that was like one of the more frightening parts, is that sequence where he's just like, well, there's somebody
like
watching
over there.
us. Yeah.
You get chased out of the building, the Historical Society, by one of the cult guys. You had to like run down the fire escape.
Damn. The cult guys were there?
Go figure. More like the cops.
Wow, that's where all the cops were. Did you ever get your dad to move the boxes in the crawl space?
I did.
I couldn't figure out how to get him to actually do it.
You just had to keep asking him.
Oh, okay. I asked him once and then gave up.
Oh. No, you have to ask him like every night for like 3 days, I think.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
At least, and then he'll do it. Yeah, it unlocks like the stairs down to the basement, I think, which doesn't make any sense that the stairs to the basement
are on the second floor.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a safe down there, and then you can find the combination to it on the bookshelf. In the hallway, and then there's a tooth inside, and then later you can just give the tooth to your dad at the end, and it gives you an achievement for it. It's like your grandfather's tooth or something.
No,
that's what happened in my game.
No. That is what happened. You're correct. That's interesting information for me.
I think it also unlocks something you can do with Greg that I didn't get to do, as far as I know.
There's one of the newspaper articles talks about, and I think is directly related to the cult. There was a workers' squabble where a guy insulted one of his workers, and it became like an employer, and it became like a physical fight, and he knocked out the guy's one tooth. And the article was like, and everyone knew how proud he was of his one remaining tooth, and so all the other workers tied the boss down and pulled all of his teeth out with a pair of pliers, and then each of them kept one of the teeth, which means that the tooth that's in the safe
is one of his teeth.
Yeah, and it's like a membership in a club, essentially like a workers' union, but like a weird one.
Yeah, because I know like your dad like quit his job, and like it probably went into like a little bit of implication there.
Yeah.
In your conversation, but I just don't remember what the dialogue was.
Yeah. I mean, knowing that, I had to read all of the newspaper articles, which I don't blame anyone for not doing. But that's the shit that I like. I don't want to go through your rigmarole of finding all the stuff. Just give me a bunch of shit to read, and I'll happily consume it like a idiot. So that's cool. I'm glad that there were... So I complained maybe 2 seconds ago about there being a bunch of stuff that you have to do work to understand. But I'm glad that we were able to have meaningfully different experiences with parts of the game because of that stuff. So I guess you win some, you lose some there. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Do you want to talk about the ending of the game?
I sure do.
So I feel like it ends kind of like abruptly, personally. Like you have the confrontation with the cult. And you escape, and May has her like her closure. She realizes like she needs to like accept like moving on, and you know, like she it seems like she overcomes like whatever's been like her personal like issues have been, and that like that's all fine. But like it feels like the cult stuff is kind of left hanging. Like there's like the scene at the end where you're at band practice and you're like, are they still out there? I don't know. And it just kind of ends.
Yeah.
Without that resolved, and I guess that's like fine in a certain way, but it's also kind of like okay, and it's also kind of like implied like that since they collapsed the mine and now the deity or whatever that was down there can't be like satiated or whatever, that the town is just like doomed if you know if that stuff's to be believed, and it just kind of leaves that stuff up in the air.
Yeah, I kind of think it's funny because I agree with those things, and I also felt like not the opposite. That's not how I would describe this. But I felt like the game left a lot of things open, which could be good, could be bad.
I think it handled like the personal narrative stuff well.
Sure.
I don't mind if you leave stuff open there. But like I just feel like the implications of like leaving the cult undealt with is just kind of weird.
Yeah. And if you think about it, like, because I found the epilogue to be like kind of meandering, where you just sort of walked about and listened to people yap for a bit, that didn't do all that much for me. But if you consider the cult storyline to be wrapped up, then your reading is that the villains that you've been chasing for half the game were just crushed by rocks, and you didn't really have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
It just happened. It's like your villain gets brushed away off screen. So the charitable reading to me is like, that happened, and the cult is dealt with, and the town is doomed, and like your dad still hates his job and wants to quit. Your house is still in jeopardy. Greg and Angus are still moving away. B is still feeling crushed under the weight of work. Life just is bad and has to go on. But then there's this supernatural goat demon that lives under the town and is dooming it to squalor or something. And I think that to me, a little bit undermines the kind of thing that I think... yes.
Undermines? Literally?
I didn't think of it. But it undermines the things that I think that, like, Firewatch did so well, where it sort of presented this narrative of being like, life has its ups and downs and not everything is wrapped up in a nice seamless little bow. To like, this game feels like it has that same sentiment, maybe a little bit more negatively tinged, but then also includes like the fucking Doom Patrol Scissormen, like an inevitable apocalypse that is occurring.
Yeah, because there's so many threads, I think. Like with Firewatch, it's more focused. And like each thing is resolved. Like there wasn't a creepy guy watching you. Well, there was, and it was, but it was a guy who you knew who it was, and he had a son.
Yeah,
and like everything is like resolved.
Yeah, it's wrapped up.
Yeah, it's not nice and neat, but it is resolved. And in this, it's like nothing is resolved.
Yeah.
But it kind of like, it feels like it's wrapping up like, oh, the taco place opened up. Like, like things aren't so bad, but then things are still so bad.
The things are terrible. Yeah.
It feels like it has like this tone of like an ending.
Yeah.
But that's like kind of going in opposition to like what's actually happening.
Like, I feel like I would like it if everybody felt like they were a little bit more personally fulfilled and like considered themselves winners and victors while there's this looming threat of destruction in the background from a supernatural source, or everything is bad, but that's also kind of the way that it always is. But at least we dealt with the supernatural thing, actually. But it's neither of those, it's both of them. And combined, it's just like almost like a crushing pressure of all of these things on top of each other. And, I mean, that's an emotion. So it did succeed in making me feel something, I guess?
Yeah, I think something like... where like the cult is more like definitively dealt with, like you got like some kind of like, oh, like we can have Molly be like filling out her police report and like, oh, these guys were found dead in the mine or whatever,
which is what she would be filling out because they weren't found dead in the mine. She was covering it up.
But so you have that more definitively dealt with, and then there's the looming threat, like you said, of the supernatural thing. Like, it feels like a good ending to, like, a horror movie, or they show the shots of, like, the empty mine, and it's like, dun, dun, and they show, like, yeah. I can just imagine it in my head, and, like, that's cool. But then, like, yeah, I feel like you also need, like, B to, like, have at least, like, some kind of, like, maybe her dad starts working again, or, like, you need, like, a little bit more of a win to balance it out, like, and then you also still have the looming threat, like things are maybe getting a little better, but like it needs to like a little bit more balance.
Yeah, and I bet there's an argument
bit
that
of
we're
push and
like
pull.
missing the point, but that's just how I feel.
Yeah, no, me too. Like, I feel like yeah, Firewatch is a really good example. Like, I think you can execute something that like that well, but like I think you do need to like resolve things in your story. Like, it's still a story, and it can have a negative resolution, but it should still have a resolution.
Yeah. And by way of example, do we have final thoughts?
My thoughts in the woods.
There it is.
Yeah, I feel like we hit on it early, kind of like what my thesis is here. It's like, it's a game that's super up our alley, that I did enjoy a lot, but I think I would have liked it more, this isn't something you can really hold against the game at all, but like, I think I would have liked it more if I had played it a few years earlier, before I played other similar things, or if I had played it, like, gone into it blind, I probably would have liked it more. But all that being said, like, it's still like a very good game, and you compared it to Wander Song, which is a game that we were like more critical of, and I think it definitely like it steps up from that and like distinguishes itself as something a little bit more like has a little bit more something to say, and it is like better executed and is worth your time. And yeah, I'm glad that I played it. I really like that it's one of these like branching narrative like adventure games that like feels super relaxed. Like, it feels like it just wants you to engage with the stuff you want to engage with, and doesn't feel like it has that like gotta do everything to get the true ending kind of feel to it, which I like. Felt kind of unique, and I didn't really like kind of like notice it fully, I think, until we were talking about it. Cause yeah, and especially as I was like reading stuff about the game, like the amount of stuff that I didn't do and I didn't feel like I was missing a ton. So I think that's an accomplishment, that it is just a more like go with the flow kind of experience, which I think even like works thematically and everything. Yeah, like the game looks great. The music was good. Yeah, I had some problems. It's got its problems. I thought some of the narrative stuff was messy when it got away from the personal stuff. I didn't think that the cult stuff was particularly well integrated to my tastes. But yeah, there's like a lot of cool stuff in here, a lot of good moments. It's a charming, cartoony art style. There's a lot to like. So yeah, I think it's a very, very good game, but not quite a great one for me.
Yep. What are we talking about? Yeah, I think that is kind of it, though. I think I liked this game, and my experience was largely hindered by the fact that there are too many other games that do similar things. I think this like indie adventure game is a medium for narrative now. And the more that it reminds me it's a video game, the more I push back mentally against it. I thought the writing in this game was extremely good. I thought it was genuinely funny. I thought it genuinely had moments of real emotion. And that kind of stuff sticks with you. If you listen back to the podcast, we talked a shitload about the characters, what we felt like characters should have been doing, how we didn't like the way that characters interacted, or wish that we could have spent more time with some of them. And you don't have those kinds of thoughts about a game unless they really sell the characters. And the things that it did not sell was the rest of the game part of it. And to me, that is sort of like this game's biggest flaw, is it's something that felt like a very strong narrative and character-based story. And I swear it's the last time I'm saying that word during this final thoughts. But outside of it, it just feels a little bit redundant. I still really liked it. I talked about what I said during the Oxenfree podcast. And yeah, if you aren't somebody who has played every one of this kind of game, this is probably one of the top 2 that I would recommend to somebody if they're looking for it. And that's kind of where I land. I think it's super good. I think it does really great things, but it's not. You shouldn't play it if you're tired of the genre, I guess.
Maybe we need a self-imposed break.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to No Clip this week.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, we're going to be talking about Xenoblade Chronicles 3. It feels good to say it. We might potentially have a little sneaky bonus in there where we will be talking about Xenoblade Chronicles 2 for all of you Chronic heads out there.
And we would like to do a full episode on it eventually, but we couldn't squeak it in before 3 came out, which is what our original plan was.
Yeah. So we need a baseline of conversation, particularly if you're somebody who hasn't played the games, to kind of like understand what the fuck this is about, and then go into the third one with a more complete understanding. So look forward to that being late. Until that time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at noclippodcast.com or on splattershot.pro. There you can find our Twitter account, our email, a link to our Discord where you can suggest games for us to talk about. You can find a link to our YouTube channel and all of our old episodes, like a million of these.
Life is Strange, all 3 of them.
Wander Song,
Oxenfree, Kentucky Route Zero. You know, narrative adventure games.
We
got them. Look at that back catalog. You'll be spoiled for choice.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Night. You know, it would be even scarier than A Night in the Woods. A night in the comment section. Oh.
Do a Super Mario 64 triple jump to smack that bell. Smash that like button, ring that bell, whatever.
Whatever. Who gives a shit? As long as you're jumping.
Oh, there was something I forgot to say, but it's not that important. But I'll say it to you. This will be bonus content. This is the bonus content.
This is the sentence.
There was a part where May is describing her why she dropped out of college. She never really goes into detail about it, but she's talking about how she's seeing everything as just shapes.
Oh yeah.
And the place my brain went to when she first said that is like, did she become self-aware that she's a video game character? Like, I thought it was going for, like, she started seeing, like, the code or, like her reality as fictional is the direction I thought it was going to go for a meta thing. And then I was like, oh, wait, no. Like, that's not what they were going for. But, like, it really felt like it, like, very intensely when I first read that.
Yeah. And when I described the art style as being lineless, I was like, everybody's just like shapes.
Yep, everybody's shapes.